welcome back. Hope you're having a good day. Got here my Ilex Schillings, Dwarf, Yaupon Holly. Some people call it a Ilex Vomitoria. I understand that there's a difference between the Vomitoria and the regular Schillings into what kind of fruit they get, but it is what it is. Now let's give you guys a look at the other side of it. Hard to keep it centered right in the picture there. But I got this in February of 2019. Basically, I picked it up off the clearance rack with like two others, and it was kind of one of these things. If I felt like if I adopted the other two, I had to take their little ugly sister too. So I took this one and pretty much pruned it down to just the two Windswept pieces. And then a couple months later, I repotted it, and then basically did nothing else to it. And the other two, I kind of just worked to death. I started thinking like, oh my goodness, they're tropicals, and I'm just going to work them. And so I got a little frightened to do any more work on this one. Really have just left it alone since then. It's been in this pot now 4 years. It was the second video I made after the hurricane. It was one of the few plants that I had that just had no damage from the hurricane. And now there's just been a couple things come up that makes me think it needs a repot. I'll show you those when I get in there. I mean, basically it's been holding a little bit of water, having a little bit of problems draining. And I just noticed that even over the last, I mentioned it in the video that I made in October, is just that it hasn't really done a whole lot of growing like it did when I first got into the pot. When I first got into the pot, like every spring I'd have to go in and just do some major cutting back because it would just get all kinds of crazy shoots everywhere. And then the last couple springs it's just barely kind of spit out a little bit. Actually last spring it did get a huge flush of flowers, and that was the first part of the video that I had there in October. And then nothing else really happened over the rest of the summer. And like I said, usually I'd have to go in there and kind of prune it back a couple times through the summer. I am starting to figure out some things about especially some of the trees that are sold more as shrubs, in that if you keep pruning them, like hedge pruning them, the branches will lignify and you'll get a lot of dieback, in that you can't really wire the lignified branches, and then sometimes it's just over pruning. If you let them grow and then just kind of prune back to a shape, they look great. But if you try to prune them back, say to keep them to the edge of a sidewalk or something like that, you'll wind up with just a whole completely dead side of it. They don't take well to that kind of back. So I've been trying to keep that in mind as I clean them up and everything. Before I get into the repot, I'm gonna just kind of lightly prune it some, get some of the obvious straight down growth, straight up growth, and then there's a couple branches that are just not fitting into the design that I have in mind, meaning that they're growing that way, so I have to take some of those out. Crown is a jam, ain't it? Alright, if I can always prune a little more once I get it repotted, just depending on what it looks like after that. Did want to show you guys, it is blooming now. Just isn't quite as full. April 1st. It's April 10th. Of course, me pruning it hard in October may have affected that too, but it is in bloom. And I just cut off a bunch of the flowers, but there are a few left. Alright, so a couple reasons why I decided to go ahead and repot it today. I couldn't help but to notice at some point that you can actually see part of the stump through the substrate where the stump is expanding, which means, you know, it could or could not be time to try to expose a little bit more of the Nabari. First off, I have pulled it up several times in the last couple weeks and found it extremely wet each time. I haven't watered it for a couple days. It did rain just a little bit yesterday, so it could be kind of wet in here. I'm hoping it's not too sopping. I don't really like working them when they're that sopping. But I am thinking I'm going to find that I used a window screen to screen the bottom of this to keep the substrate from falling out, because in these training pots, the drain holes are just a little bit too big for the bonsai substrate. One of the things I have figured out on my own is that using that window screen is probably a bad idea unless you're sure you're only going to leave it potted up in that pot for a couple years. I'm pretty sure that's what got this, what has this all clogged up. Still pretty wet considering that I have not watered it for a couple days. Rain was pretty light yesterday. Didn't last too terribly long. All right, and I think the first thing I'm going to find is that screen. And I may be lucky that nobody was here to bet me. So I don't think I have any in here. I think what I actually did was I took organic soil and put it in the bottom of the pot to keep the better substrate from draining out. Probably did a fairly timid repot on it. Oh well, I've been wrong before. Alright, so that's what we got for now. Now that I've gotten it all muddy and dirty, I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but this is what I was talking about right in there. You can see part of the stump coming that way. This root here, which actually has some damage that almost got healed over at one point, which I think does give the tree a little character there. But that one comes this way, and you can see it kind of wrapping that. And then this may very well be the taproot that just kind of sunk down in there. What I'm going to do now at this point, and again over here, you can see where I was trying to hit that with the root hook and kind of damaging part of what appears to be a very, very rough stump. At this point, I'm going to go out and hit it with the garden hose. I think I can see why it wasn't really draining all that well. I left a lot more organic soil in there than I usually would. I did use the older substrate that I used to use too, that also isn't quite as porous as the new stuff I use. So I'm gonna just try to rinse it off, see if I can tell where the the root mass stops and ends, and where it's just a compacted peat. Try to break up some of that stuff and see what happens. Take a look at it here in a couple minutes. Alright, and for a guy that really has too many pots laying around, I can never really seem to find the exact size pot that I want. I thought about, I had originally planned actually to get it potted back up into the original pot that I had it in, but this is almost like an exact shape of that pot, and I do want it to spread out a little bit more All the other rectangular and slightly bigger training pots that I had were just a little bit too big, or just a little bit too small. This one that I've decided to put it in is a little bit too big, but it's going to have to do. I got a good root ball to tie in on this side. This side here, I do have that surface root. I did decide I want to leave that. It's very interesting, I think. I did cut off the end of it here. It was this root that was circling along with one on this side, or this one right here that was circling. Once I cut that one and this one off, the rest of it actually all kind of came apart kind of easily. So when I go to tie it in, I'm going to have to slip that under there. This side I should just be able to tie normally. Alright, let me use my American chopstick here. For the stage of development it's in, definitely just a little over potted here, but I did want to give it a wider pot, let the roots escape a little bit. This is it's a used pot. Found a little stamp on the bottom. If anybody can give me information on it, I'd appreciate that. If you guys could take a look at that. I'm not sure if I really have that right side up or not. This is the side I've always considered to be the front. I think the Nabari looks much better on this side. Has that interesting little wound on the root there that's almost healed over. Very hard to get this guy centered all at one time. And this is the other side. I think sometimes the structure of the tree actually looks better on this side, but it's got more of a plain Nabari. We'll see how it goes through time.